Hi again, this is Serial Cynic. I'm back again with another video, and I'll be returning back to dealing with Hebrew Israelites again. Okay? Um, One of the reasons is because I've looked through my comments section and I have seen a few of them, or supporters, or people that at least support their theory, that they mention the Bible to me. They throw out Bible verses. They use Bible verses to back up their points. And if you pay attention to my videos, you already know what I think about the Bible. You know it's not a book I live my life by. You know it's a book that, while I do respect its place in literature, it's not a book I hold up to try to go ahead and, how should I put this? I can use the Bible to prove certain things, but I don't use it to prove things that are, how should I put it? To prove it, to say, well, this over here is true, and because it's true, I'm going to live by all of its contents. I look at it as being true in terms of the fact that it does provide certain historical things, which are true. It does provide some historical context here and there, and it provides some insightful historical things that could lead to the understanding of other things in the ancient world. So, in that regard. But in terms of me taking the book to try to validate something, um, as in this case, the Hebrew Israelites, it can be problematic, and I'll show why soon. Now, the Hebrew Israelites believe that they are the descendants of the people mentioned in the Bible, namely the Old Testament. In other words, you're a black man today, living on this side of the world, here in the Americas, that you can look back and you can say your ancestors were the likes of Moses, David, Solomon, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the various peoples that they gave birth to, the 12 tribes of Israel, that we're descendants of such people. Now, suffice it to say, and fair to say, I would say that most people out here in today's world believe that things like, well, at least when it comes to Hebrew Israelites, I want to believe that, like many other people, they don't believe that you should enslave other people, that you should go around murdering other people, and that it's fair to go ahead and just do the most dastardly things to people, at least to themselves. And as black folks, we can say that some horrible things, have been done to us. And we can look at something as recent as slavery. And I say recent because that's something that's relatively modern in terms of when you look at the history of the earth, and you look at, I shouldn't say the earth, but the history of human civilization. It's been something that's relatively recent. I mean, we're just talking about something that just ended, what, a century and a half ago? So yes, some horrible, inhumane things has been done to us as black folks. And in a sense, they still continue, disguised on the different ways, going about in different ways, and so forth. The system skewed against us, designed in some places and in some cases to make us fail, to keep us down, to keep us lost, to keep us going backwards, to keep us killing ourselves. These are things we can look at and we can say, yeah, we've gone through some things. Our ancestors went through some things. And we're still reeling from the residual effects of this system that was set up and put in place to keep us where we are. This does not mean that you don't have black folks who have not been successful, who have risen above a lot of these things. But you look around, and in a lot of places, you can find where black folks, whether it be here or whether it be over in Africa, that are still struggling and still reeling again from the residual effects of systems designed to keep us where we are. Now, I'm not some black nationalist. I'm going to go be out here, I hate white people and white people. No, I am not that. Okay? Just want that to be understood. But I can clearly understand the frustration and anger some black folks feel from all that has been done to us as a race. With that being said, and we have that understanding, Hebrew Israelites, going back to my comment section, or just from what I've seen in other comments in other places, they toss out the Bible and use it as proof and evidence to back up their claims, being that they are the descendants of these ancient Israelites. And again, they use the Bible to back up their claims. Now, here's something that I want them to consider. I've said that using the Bible is like a two-edged sword. I've said it in other videos. I've said it in some of my comment section. You hold the Bible up in one hand, say, see, right here, it proves this, it proves that, it proves this. But when you're holding the Bible over here and holding up as being truthful, holding up as something that you want to validate your claims with, over here on the other hand, it has some things that you have to deal with, and it places you in a dilemma. Christians today deal with that. The Hebrew Israelites are no different. If you're going to use the Bible as something factual, something that you base your life on, and something that you're going to use to back up your claims. So, if these ancient Israelites were your ancestors, there's some questions that you need to answer. For example, if we take a look at a book like Numbers, and we look at chapter 31, there we read, and I'm not reading it from right now, looking at it right now at the moment, so I'll have to paraphrase it. But supposedly, Moses gets this itch. Again, let me oblige the Hebrew Israelites. Let me oblige them and say, okay, the Bible is true. What's written in there, it's true. It's accurate. I don't believe that, of course, or in all cases, but let's just say it is. In Numbers chapter 31, Moses gets this itch. And he basically just, now remember, at this point, Moses is an old guy, about to die. He's found out he's not making it to that promised land of Canaan. Probably angry, probably an old curmudgeon at this point, probably senile, probably just losing his mind, probably turned into a megalomaniac, who knows. But he gets this itch. And according to him, the Lord told him to have the armies of Israel go to Midian and take vengeance on them. The reason for this vengeance supposedly has to do with something of the Midianites enticing Israel or the Israelites to do wrong by worshiping idols and so forth. Now there's a little problem here, because in order to put this chapter in context, you've got to go back a few chapters. And supposedly at some point, there was a situation where I guess the Israelites came up against the Midianites, if I'm remembering this correctly. Remember, I'm not looking right now. And in meeting up with the Midianites, I guess the Midianites were doing their usual worshiping their gods, having their orgies, or whatever the case may have been. And supposedly when the Israelites came upon these Midianites, supposedly the Midianites enticed them to do what they were doing, which in the eyes of Moses, well, the Lord, was not cool because it took them away from their God to go worship other people's gods. And when this happened, according to the Bible, a plague broke out, started killing a bunch of Israelites. So naturally, like I've mentioned in some of my other videos, you start looking around for something to blame. Hey, this plague came about when we started doing this. So if we eliminate this, we'll stem the plague. So supposedly, you had a zealous guy by the name of Phineas who saw the ringleaders in action. Apparently, this Israelite man brought in this foreign woman, and they're having their thing going on in their tent. And Phineas, supposedly suspecting they are the cause of this plague, goes and takes a spear and just basically impales both of them. And grabbed all the others who engaged and strung them up on spears in the sun, facing the sun. And somehow, according to the Bible, this appeased God. And he stepped back and said, all right, I'll stop this plague. I think you guys have done the job that I needed you guys to do. Supposedly, this stayed with Moses. So later on down the road, it's like, I'm an old guy. Who can I take some revenge on right now? Oh yeah, those Midianites. Remember what they did to us? Remember what they caused? There's one little problem here, though, is that the persons that Phineas killed, it wasn't a Midianite woman that enticed the Israelite man, according to them. It's a Midianite woman. It's a woman that enticed this Israelite man. Actually, the woman was a Moabite, a different group of people. There may have been some relation from the Midianites. But instead of going after Moab, Moses sends his armies after Midian. They go down to Midian, and they just commence slaughtering the Midianites. Again, believing the Bible is true, okay? And they commence going ahead and just slaughtering all these Midianites. But the armies had a heart. They decided to spare all the young boys, I think all the innocent children or whatever, and the women. And they come back home with all these prisoners of war and come back before Moses and, hey, we did what you told us to do. Went down there, killed off all their men. Don't have to worry about them anymore. Moses looks around and happens to realize they brought back all these women and they brought back all these children. We think Moses at that point would say, good work, guys. Okay, we got rid of their fighting men, so we don't have to worry about that anymore, or them taking vengeance upon us, or them jumping us before we jump them. Moses gets angry. Why are you sparing these women? Why are you sparing these children? Slaughter all of them. But make sure you hold on to the virgin girls. Keep them for yourselves. Kill off all the women who've had sex with men and they're not virgins. I don't know how they figure this out, who are virgins and who are not. But anyway, again, let's work with the Bible. Supposedly they killed off all the little boys, all the little children. I guess you could say all the little boys. All the girls that were virgin, you, men of war, keep them for yourselves. That's your little present. And kill off all the other women who've had sex and they're not virgins. Now, when you think of that horrific story, and you think about Moses, assuming he was real, again, working with the fact that the Bible is real, or true, telling the truth, this man Moses, for the Hebrew Israelites, would be a part of your ancestors. Yet, the book of Deuteronomy, which is supposedly and allegedly a book that Moses wrote, you're taking that book from this man to prove your points, notably Deuteronomy chapter 28. But let's not stop there. Let's look at other things in Deuteronomy. Let's look at the rules of engagement when it comes to war. What Moses allegedly passed out as how you should deal with your enemies when you go to war. Now, this is one that I'm going to read, and we can look at Deuteronomy chapter 20, 10 through 15. And it says, when you march up to attack a city, make its people an offer of peace. If they accept and open their gates, all the people in it shall be subject to forced labor and shall work for you. If they refuse to make peace and they engage you in battle, lay siege to that city. And when the Lord your God delivers it into your hand, put to the sword all of the men in it. As for the women, the children, the livestock, and everything else in the city, you may take these as plunder for yourselves, and you may use the plunder the Lord your God gives you from your enemies. This is how you are to treat all the cities that are at a distance from you and do not belong to the nations nearby. Now, whether this ever happened is up for debate, but apparently these were the rules that Moses was giving to the people when they went out and engaged in war, I guess in distant places. Again, this is supposed to be the ancestors. Maybe I may have been saying descendants before. These are supposedly the ancestors of the Hebrew Israelites. To which I ask, are you proud of this? Can you relate to this? And say, yeah, that's my people back then, plundering, killing, massacring. And we're proud of this. I don't think any Hebrew Israelite is going to sit down and look at that and like, oh yeah, I'm proud of that. But if they're like other Christians, you have to try to start to explain these things away. Now, you can look at it and say, hey, because Hebrew Israelites, I know, I can't say all of them, but I know some of them seem to wear it as a badge of honor that we're cursed people. And we're cursed because you have to go with that whole idea of we're cursed because of A, B, C. And to remove the curse, just like with Phineas and Moses believing that if they killed these people, such and such was going to happen, God was going to stop the plague. So if you believe you're cursed, and you're cursed because you didn't follow this, and that, well, a logical reason is we need to follow this, and that in order to get the blessings. Right? But now we have these type of things. And now, like Christians, you dig yourself a deeper hole. Because, well, you know what? God allowed this to happen to these people back then because they were cursed. And it was only rightful. God was just sending down his judgment because they weren't following him the way that he was supposed to. And so God just allowed his judgment. So yes, he allowed the Israelites to move in, and he used the Israelites as his judgment piece to go ahead and execute his judgment and so forth. Really? Are you going to tell me you really believe that? That this was the MO of the God of the Bible? That he couldn't do the dirty work himself? That he had to have a guy like Moses being his mouthpiece going around executing slaughter? Where is this any different from people like groups like ISIS or other terrorist groups that are around who believe that they're carrying out the work of Allah or whatever God or whoever or wherever? That their big bad God can't do this judgment on himself on his own, so he needs us to carry it out for him. And let's not stop there. The Bible gets rather bloody. We read about Joshua, how he is the follower, or he comes behind Moses after Moses dies out, and he's commissioned to go into this new promised land of Canaan. I should say successor of Moses. And he goes in to Canaan, into the promised land, and just starts massacring everybody in sight. If I have to remember how it's written in the book of Joshua, he went ahead killing people in the hillside, in the valleys, everywhere, and he left none breathing. Speaking of the Canaanites, that is. Again, let's work with the Bible that this stuff is true. So Joshua, an Israelite. If I'm not mistaken, I think he was from, I don't remember which tribe he was from actually. I think he was from Ephraim. I could be wrong. But he goes massacring and killing, wiping out all these people. Again, Joshua would be, supposedly, an ancestor of Hebrew Israelites. But look at what he was engaging himself in. Massacring the Canaanites. And when you think about it, if you read through the Bible, you don't see one place where the Canaanites ever did the Israelites anything. They were in their own land, minding their own business, living their own lives. And here comes this invading army of Israelites that goes in and wipes them out. Again, working with the Bible. They did not declare war on Israel, the Israelites. They did not do any such thing. They're minding their own business, living in their own lands. And the Israelites show up. And if we had to follow the Bible again with all this propaganda, you guys are evil. God promised this land to our forefather Abraham. Now remember, Abraham, as he was called back then, according to the Bible, heard some voice. Supposedly it's the biblical God that says, get up out of your land and come over to this other land that I'm going to give to you and your descendants. When Abraham shows up, there are people already living there. Think about Christopher Columbus showing up. Oh, there are people living here? Hey, you guys don't belong here. God promised this land to us. So it's no big deal if we kill you guys off, because it's promised to us. Or the modern Israelis show up. Hey, the Bible says this land belongs to Palestinians. Hey, we don't really care. This land belongs to us. We'll kill you, section you off over into this little section over here, and rule over you and dominate you and hold you back and keep you down. What difference do we find in the Old Testament when it comes about doing this? Again, the Canaanites didn't do them anything, minding their own business, living their own lives. And according to the Bible, the Israelites just showed up. Propaganda. You guys are bad. You guys are wicked. You guys are not doing the things that you're supposed to do. And because you're not doing that, and God gave you some time to repent, and because, of course, it had to be set up earlier, your forefather, Ham, and his son Canaan, some bad guys, did some bad things. And so Noah got up, not God, Noah got up and cursed Ham's son, Canaan, and said, you are going to be slaves. You are going to be this. You're going to be that. Let it unfold now. Years, hundreds of years later, the Canaanites are living in their land. These are supposedly the children or the descendants of Canaan who was cursed by Noah. And the Israelites show up and say, hey, you remember that curse back in like early Genesis when Noah cursed your patriarch Canaan? We Israelites, we're here to carry out the judgment on you. So let's go ahead and just wipe you out. So, there is reasons now. There's justification. This is why we're here to wipe you out. Again, these Israelites, these are supposedly the ancestors that you look up to, or you grab the Bible and you look at it and you pick out all the nice little parts to say, see, that's us. We're God's special snowflakes. Talking about us. This Bible talking about us. Well, if you're going to take that and take all the glory and all the nice things, how about all this bad stuff? How about the part in the book of Numbers or Deuteronomy, I don't remember which one it is, where you're commanded that if you have a family member turning you away from Yahweh, leading you astray, that you're not serving Yahweh, that you're supposed to grab hold of that family member, and you as a family member is supposed to kill that person for leading you astray. Just imagine that. You have someone in your family coming to you, you're Hebrew Israelite, someone coming to your family and saying, hey, I'm a Muslim, man, check this out. Or, hey, man, I'm a Christian, man, check this out. Come on over to our side. According to the Bible, you're supposed to grab hold of that person and go out there and stone the person to death. You, the person that they're talking to, got to grab hold of that person and stone them to death. Yes, it's in the Bible. It's in Deuteronomy and Numbers. You can go ahead and look it up. I'm not looking it up right now. I should have gotten it but trust me, I've read it. Like I've mentioned before, I've read the Bible from cover to cover 4 times. It's been years since I've gone through reading it like I used to read it back then when I was in my teens and in my early 20s. But it's in there. So again, I ask you, when you're holding up the Bible to make certain points over here, or I should mention to you, I should say, when you're holding the Bible up over here to make certain points and to prove certain things, it has a dark side to it that you now have to also explain. And this is the dilemma that a lot of Christians find themselves in. Because a lot of Christians, while they're singing their glory songs on the way to heaven, picking up the New Testament and reading all the nice lovey stuff and going, maybe, cracking a psalm or two to talk about, oh, the psalm says this, it touches my soul. A lot of times it takes atheists, agnostics, or other unbelievers to point out this dark side of the Bible to them. And most of them have never read these things or even know it's in their Bible. And they're like, God in his wife's judgment must have known the reason why he did all that stuff. Or that's the law. We don't follow that anymore. God has delivered us and now we're on the grace and we don't do that stuff anymore. But yet when they want to prove a point, they'll grab that Old Testament and you see right here in the book of Habakkuk, it says so and so. You can't have that cake and eat it too. So I ask, when it comes to my Hebrew Israelites and you're throwing up Bible verses in my comment section to prove certain things, how do you explain these other little tidbits about your ancestors who engage in massacring, slavery? No, let's not even talk about women's rights and how they treated women. Massacring children. And a crazy man like Moses ordering massacres on seemingly innocent people who did him nothing. And the funny thing about this whole thing about Numbers chapter 31 about Moses going and ordering the killing of the Midianites is that his wife Zipporah was a Midianite. His father-in-law, who was instrumental in helping him out, was a Midianite priest. And another interesting thing is, scholars have pointed out that this whole Yahweh cult that Moses was following, that David followed, and that became the biblical God, originated right there. Or at least was a big thing right there in the desert in Midian. And Moses, it was while he was amongst these Midianites, encountered Yahweh at the burning bush. And the career of Yahweh interacting with Israel began right there in Midian. Yet we have this old guy about to die, probably losing his mind, decides, that wife of mine, Zipporah, I can't stand her little dirty ass. Go down there and kill off her family and her whole people and everything. Well, she might have been dead by then, who knows? Bitter old man who decided he's going to execute vengeance at this point. Of course, the Bible has to say the Lord told Moses, right? Got to throw God in there somewhere. Again, working on the idea that the Bible is true, that is something that you believe. How are you going to go ahead explaining all those little dark little secrets, all little things in the Bible shoved away that nobody wants to talk about? Sure, you can whip out Deuteronomy chapter 28. See, right here it says if we do this, and that, God is going to bless us. And if we do this, and that, God is going to curse us. And right there it talks about ships and ships to Egypt. So it's talking about us. Because again, who doesn't want to be the great God who created the universe? Who doesn't want to be his little special snowflake? Makes you feel big in the chest. Makes you feel proud. I am one of his special snowflakes. You other people over there are imposters. You other people over there were created by whatever. You're not like us. We're blessed. We're special. So, when you're in my comment section and you're tossing out the Bible out there to prove certain things, these are the things that are going through my mind. And I know you put it out there because, like I've explained in another video, you slip it in there as if to say, this is some authority. This Bible is, well, this is my phone, but you say some Bible. This Bible right here is the authority. We don't even establish what this is really all about and whether or not it can even enter the realm of the debate. I say something, you come in, well, the Bible says, okay, so the Bible says, so what does that have to do with anything? But right here, prediction, the Bible says that we are the, what does that have to do with anything? Again, like I said in one of my other videos, that is like coming in and saying, well, hey, I believe in Wakanda. And I ask you, where do you get that from? Well, hey, this Marvel comic book here says it exists. This movie I watch called The Black Panther says it exists. So it must be true. Let's go back and look at that Marvel comic. Let's find out its origins. Let's find out where it came from, who created it, what was it really all about. Let's go back to that movie, who created it, what was it all about, what's going on, before we can even start talking about using it as an authority in this debate. So you have to be careful when you're tossing in the Bible as if it's like, whoa, I'm saying something and you're bringing in the Bible to prove a point. Well, if you want to use the Bible and you want to prove points and you want to say it's true and you want to say it's real and you want to say what it's talking about in there is the accurate word of God, the Most High, Elohim, or whatever you want to say, let's go ahead and dig up some of these other things in here that your supposed ancestors did. The same things that you point to that white folks has done to you. What if I turn around and say, hey, it's fair play. You did it to people back then, and you got your return later on. It'd be ridiculous to think of something like that, right? So, some of these chapters that I've mentioned and some of these scriptures that I mentioned, if you can explain these things to me, go ahead and drop it down in the comment section. All right? I can bet you cannot come up with any kind of sensible explanation. Try. This was your Serial Cynic. Thank you for looking at this video. And again, put it in the comment section. Try to be respectful. I know it might anger some of you. Try to be respectful if you can. Okay? You can like it, dislike it, but share it. Tell your friends about it. All right? Until the next installment, we'll talk again.